Thank you. Thank you very much. The rest of the speech will be in English. Very nice to meet you all, and it's a huge honor to have been invited to the World Knowledge Forum. I actually visited here a few years ago to this conference, so perhaps some of us have met before. I was very kindly invited here today to share my story with you, and that's the story of how I learned my grandmother's secret jam recipe at the age of 14. And over the past 15 years, have turned her recipes into a company that has since sold millions of jars of jam around the world. As you'll have seen on the program, the topic of today's session is how to start your own business in a weekend. And that might sound like an unrealistic goal, and perhaps it is, but it's based on this book, which I wrote a few years ago, called The 48-Hour Startup. And in the book, I did an experiment, and over the course of 2 days, came up with an idea for a business, a name, created a brand, designed packaging, launched a website, and found the first couple of customers. And I wanted to share all of the things that I've learned in my career about how to start your own small business. Now, if you came along here hoping to hear the secret to how to make $1 billion, I'm afraid that won't be contained in this talk. But I am passionate about the idea that anybody can start their own small business. I don't think it matters how young you are, how old you are, if you have an MBA or are still in high school. I'm passionate about the idea that anybody can start their own business. I know that a lot of people have an idea for a business, perhaps some of you do as well, and a lot of people don't take the first step and actually start. They think about their idea, they plan and analyze, and never quite get around to actually starting. And so I wanted to share some tips to get your idea off the ground. I guess if I share with you a little bit of background of my own journey as an entrepreneur, I would say that I started out at perhaps an unusually young age. And in fact, ever since I was a little boy, I was involved in coming up with ideas to try and start my own business. And probably the most harebrained story of all came from when I was about 10 years old. And my childhood friend and I visited a local farm, and the chicken farm, and we thought it was a fantastic business. The farmer just had to feed the chickens, he could steal their eggs and sell them and make a profit. And so we convinced the farmer to give us a free box of eggs, which we took home to my mum and dad and explained that we'd had this great business idea, that we would keep the eggs warm so they would hatch, and we would start our own chicken farm in the back garden. And as I'm sure you can imagine, my parents weren't too excited about this business idea, but they let us give it a shot, not really expecting that two 10-year-old boys could find a way of hatching eggs. And so we put the box of eggs on top of the TV, where it was kind of warm. And amazingly, a few weeks later, 4 of the eggs hatched into little chickens. And I mean, the poor things, they probably thought that Oprah Winfrey was their mum, being born on top of a TV. But soon they were big enough to go out into the back garden. They started laying eggs, and we sold the eggs to the neighbors. And so that was my first ever business at the age of 10. Unfortunately, though, my career as a chicken farmer was sadly ended one afternoon when the local fox decided to eat my chickens for dinner. And as tragic and upsetting as that day was, it didn't put me off completely, but I decided that perhaps I should get a job. And at the age of 12, I got a job for the Bacon Man. And he was the first entrepreneur I ever met in my life. And he ran something of an empire, employing 50 school children around Edinburgh to sell bacon and sausages door to door. And he would come to my house and make a delivery every week of bacon, and I would have to knock on doors and sell it in the neighborhood. And it was very difficult. It was a hard way to make pocket money. Sometimes it was raining or snowing or very cold, but we would have to go out and knock on hundreds of doors and try and sell bacon. Most people said no. Most people didn't open the door. But eventually, we managed to make a business. And I guess for me, this process of door-to-door selling, I didn't realize at the time, but gave me a very good grounding in how to be an entrepreneur. Because most things you try don't work. They certainly don't work first time around. But if you can keep knocking on doors, keep trying, eventually you'll hopefully find success. And so by the time I was 14, one afternoon I was visiting my grandmother, and she was making jam in her kitchen just in the same way as she had for as long as I can remember. And that's a picture of my grandmother there. She's the one in the middle. And I got really excited about it and asked my gran to teach me how to make jam. And we spent the afternoon making a few jars together, and the same day I ran around to the supermarket and I bought some fruit and made a few jars of my own. And before they'd even cooled down, I came up with some labels on the computer and I started knocking on doors, selling it to the neighbors. After a while, the media heard about the story of a young guy taking my grandmother's jam recipes and making a little business out of them. And that's an article from page 3 of the Edinburgh Evening News from when I was about 15, which I guess probably just meant there wasn't really anything happening in Edinburgh that day for something like that to make it into the news. But soon I had left school and I was cooking jam all day, every day, in my parents' tiny little kitchen, cooking up to 1,000 jars of jam a week and selling them at farmers' markets all over Scotland. It became my dream to try and sell my product to a supermarket, so I convinced my dad to drive me to Waitrose. And Waitrose are one of the big supermarkets in the UK. I borrowed my dad's suit, probably 4 sizes too big for me. He waited in the car outside, and I got my opportunity to pitch my idea to the senior jam buyer of Waitrose. And he said it was a great idea to make jam 100% from fruit, but he explained I would need to set up production in a factory and create a brand before he would be interested in selling my products. But eventually, we managed to launch SuperJam in all of their stores. There was a huge amount of media coverage at that time. I was invited to have dinner with the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, at number 10 Downing Street when he heard about it. My grandmother and I were invited to Buckingham Palace and given a medal by Prince Charles, which was a very lovely day out for my grandmother. SuperJam was entered into the National Museum of Scotland as an example of an iconic Scottish brand alongside Iron Brew and Baxter's Soup and Tonnock's tea cakes. But most excitingly, we've started selling SuperJam in lots of countries around the world, and most importantly, here in South Korea. We've been selling SuperJam here for about 6 years, and we supply lots of department stores and supermarkets and online channels as well. A couple of years ago, I got the opportunity to to sell SuperJam on Lotte TV Home Shopping, and I was invited by Che Yura onto her show, and she asked if we could try and do this in Korean. And so I tried my best. I memorized a few key sentences about jam in Korean, and we recorded the show. But unfortunately, my Korean was terrible, but it was no problem. Che Yura came up with a suitable replacement, a cardboard cutout. There he is there. So this was a low point of my career, being successfully replaced with a piece of cardboard. We've also done a range of collaboration jams with Super Junior. And when we launched in Japan, my life story was made into a dramatized TV reenactment. And as you can see, the actor who was chosen to play my part of the movie was in fact a small Indian boy. I think something got lost in translation somewhere along the way, but never mind. And I think I have to show you a short clip from this show. It's quite honestly the highlight of my entire life so far.
Fraser. 思いついたらとにかく実行することが一番大切なんだよ。その2年後、フレイザー君が12歳の時、
Exactly how it happened in real life. I can assure you. So I guess that's the background of the SuperJam story. And so this comes to the topic of today's session, which is how to start your own business in a weekend. And in the book, I began in the same place that everybody begins when they want to start a business, which was looking at a blank piece of paper, trying to come up with an idea. And a lot of the time people say, how can you come up with an idea for a business? Surely everything has already been done. And when people say that, it reminds me of quite a famous quote that I quite like by this man. His name is Charles H. Jewell, and he was Commissioner of Patents in the US in 1899. And at that time, he said that the US Patent Office would soon have to close. He said, everything that can be invented has been invented. And of course, we now know that that was very untrue. So many things have been invented in the 100 or so years that have passed. And I think in the next decade, in the next 100 years, the same thing will be true. Human beings have an endless ability to come up with new ideas and innovation. I guess we have a TV show in the UK called Dragon's Den. There's one in America called Shark Tank, and perhaps you have a version here in South Korea. And the idea of the show is that entrepreneurs, quite often inventors, wacky inventors, go on the show, they arrive in the TV studio with a suitcase, they open it up, and inside is some kind of invention that solves some kind of very specific problem. And they say, nobody's ever done this before. And sometimes there's a good reason why. But then, in general, this gives people the impression that starting a business has to be about creating an invention. But in my experience, it's not. Most business ideas are not completely original. Most business ideas are not an invention, but they are just a slightly different way of doing things. And so in the book, the clock was ticking. I wanted to come up with an idea as quickly as I could. And something that I was amazed by in this process was how much you can achieve if you just focus. If you focus even for just 2 days on actually starting your business, you can make a huge amount of progress. And so I began by trying to come up with my idea. And I started by writing down everything that interests me, all of my hobbies and passions and interests, which I think is a great place to start. I think it's really important that you work on a business that you're passionate about, something that excites you, because it probably won't work first time around. You'll probably come up against bumps in the road. And if it's not something that you're passionate about, there's a good chance you'll end up quitting when things don't work first time around. So in my case, I decided to start an oatmeal company, porridge oats with nuts and seeds and chocolate inside. This was an idea that excited me. But you might need to look for some inspiration for your idea if it doesn't come quite so quickly. And so a few places that I can recommend where I sometimes come across great ideas. One is called Beta List, and it's a blog that publishes lots of new startups every day. So you can often find, for example, some startups in America that are getting some traction. A similar website is called Product Hunt. People submit different product ideas and they vote on the ones they think are the coolest, and you can definitely come across some new products and ideas on there. Another place you might want to look is crowdfunding websites. The biggest one is called AngelList. You've probably also heard of Kickstarter. And you can look on there, watch a video by the entrepreneurs. Sometimes you can read their business plan, and you can get a lot of great ideas by checking them out. I definitely don't think you need to come up with an original idea. I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with looking at a business that's having some success, for example, in America, and figuring out how to apply that business here. I think that there isn't such a thing as an original idea. It's very natural to take inspiration from what other people are doing. When I was in high school studying business, they told you that every business has to have a unique selling point, a USP. And that seemed to make sense at the time, but something that I've found to be true is that business doesn't need to be unique. Usually businesses that are successful are not completely unique. But what's important is not that your product is unique, but that your brand is unique, your story is unique, and maybe your company culture and philosophy. So if you can focus on figuring out how to be unique in those ways, the actual idea for your business doesn't have to be completely unique. And if you do come up with something that is original, if it has any success, somebody else will copy it pretty quickly. So it won't be unique anymore. But if you can figure out how to create a unique brand, then that's something that you can defend. Having a unique brand is about having a story. Now, in my case, I have a story of my gran and I starting out together. Maybe you're not starting your business with your grandmother, but I'm sure that there's something special about you as a person, your story, why you're passionate about your business. So you've got to figure out what is your story and figure out how to tell it. A test that sometimes people talk about is called the grandma test. And the concept of this is that if you have an idea for a business and you can't explain it to your own grandmother, then you probably haven't thought it through well enough, and you're probably going to have a hard time explaining it to a customer. And so in my case, I pitched my idea for a healthy oatmeal company to my grandmother. As you can see, she gave it the thumbs up, and so I moved on to the next step. Something I think is very exciting is that starting a business doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You don't have to take a lot of risk. In the past, it would have cost a lot of money to create a website, to create a brand, but now you can do it very, very cheaply. And as an entrepreneur, this is your huge advantage. You can do things fast. As an entrepreneur, you're like a speedboat. You can change course. If you get some feedback from a customer, you can change your idea. And big companies find it harder to do that. A big company is like an oil tanker being steered with a spoon. It takes them a long time to innovate, to change, but as an entrepreneur, you can do things fast. I guess the first step is coming up with a name, and this is something that a lot of people get really stuck on. They really labor on what they should call their business, but in my opinion, I don't think it matters as much as people think. If you think of the names of big brands, of companies that are successful, their names often are just a couple of random words. They don't really make sense sometimes. So my recommendation would be not to spend too much time thinking of your name. There's a tool online which has a funny name itself. It's called Bust a Name. And you can enter lots and lots of words that are related to your idea, words that you like, and it will show you all the combinations of those words that are available to buy as a domain name. So that's a really easy tool to help come up with your name. The next step is to create a logo, and I definitely would say as a startup entrepreneur, you do not need to hire an expensive design agency. Maybe once you get some funding or you've had some sales or some early success, you might want to redesign your packaging and branding using an agency, but initially you can create a logo very cheaply. One way of doing it is by setting up a competition on 99 designs, and lots of freelance designers will pitch ideas to you. There's a tool called Logo Joy, and you can select different fonts that you like, select different colors and icons, and it will show you all the possible combinations of those. So you can create a logo in a matter of minutes, and you can get going. You might also want to buy some fonts. A website I'd recommend is called You Work For Them. And so in my case, I had a logo within a few hours of coming up with the idea. Now, it's not going to win any design awards, but I don't think that's important at this stage. The next step was to create some packaging. Now, you might not need to design packaging for your startup business, but probably you'll need to design something. And so in my case, I contacted a freelance designer using a website called Upwork. You can hire all kinds of different freelancers by the hour, very inexpensively. The process of creating packaging design, first step is to create a mood board. Basically collect lots of images of packaging designs that I think give me the same feeling that I want people to get when they look at my product. And so some websites to do that are the Die Line, Lovely Package, Dribble, Behance, and I'll put all of these links on my website if you think they'd be helpful to you. So I created a mood board, and definitely packaging design is hugely important to the success, especially of a food and drink product. The first impression that you give to the customer is your packaging, and if it doesn't look great, they won't take it off the shelf to find out how great it tastes. And I learned this lesson the hard way. When I first wanted to create my packaging for SuperJam, I figured that there was a link between SuperJam and Superman, or so we thought, and decided to create the brand around a comic book theme. And we had a lot of fun writing jokes on the labels and on the lids, and I figured that if I could make people laugh, then maybe they would buy my product. But when I presented this concept to Waitrose, the supermarket, they said no. They explained that this was not how packaging works. It's not about making people laugh. You've got to figure out what's the message that you want to get across, and get it across really simply and easily. And in my case, that was the message of 100% fruit. And so we then created packaging that was a lot more simple and modern, and they got our message across much better. And so applying all of that, we created packaging for Awesome Oats, this porridge brand for the book. And I was able to make the first batch myself in my kitchen at home. Definitely for a food and drink business, you can get going making products at home. If it's something else, maybe you need to find a manufacturer. in the early stages, it's not really important that it's efficient. It's not really important that everything's perfect. What's important is that you can create your product, get it out to customers, and get some feedback from them, and then eventually perfect your product based on what they tell you. Probably every business is going to want to make a website, and a few places I'd recommend are Shopify, which is a very useful tool. You don't need to know how to code. You can just upload your images, write your descriptions, put some information and prices on there, and you can be ready to start selling your products in a matter of hours. A similar website is called Strikingly, and another one is called Squarespace. So these are really easy ways to launch a website in a matter of hours without any technical knowledge. And so you basically select a template that you like the look of, you upload your images, and you're ready to start going. And so I was able to set up my website and be ready to start accepting orders from customers on day number 2 of the project. And so that was basically the story of Awesome Oats and of the 48-hour startup. And I guess something that also is really important is figuring out how to get advice from other entrepreneurs or experts. And you know, sometimes I'll come to an event like this and someone will say, hey, I have an idea for a business. And I'll say, oh, what's your idea? And I'll say, I'm not going to tell you. You might steal it. And I think that's how a lot of people think about ideas. I think a lot of people hold them close to their chest and they worry that someone is going to steal their idea. But actually, I think that's upside down. I think if you can tell people your ideas, tell everybody your ideas, you don't know who is the person who's going to give you some advice or recommend the next steps to get your idea off the ground. A website that you can get some advice from is called Clarity. So you can set up phone calls with experts and you pay by the minute to talk to them. And that's been something that's been helpful to us. I guess applying all of this process, my friend and I started our beer club, Beer 52. And the idea came from James taking a motorcycle road trip around Europe. He visited places like Belgium and stopped at breweries and craft beer bars along the way. He fell in love with craft beer, came back to Scotland and said, hey, why don't we start a beer club? And every month we'll go to a new country, we'll try all the beers, pick the best ones and put them in a box to send out to our customers. And so that's what started in the space of a weekend, our next adventure with Beer 52. Since then, we've become the most popular craft beer club anywhere in the world. We've got about 50,000 subscribers in our club, and it's growing very fast indeed. And we're happy to say that we've got fantastic ratings on review websites for our service, but it wasn't always like that. And when we first launched, and when you first launch your business, your product won't be quite right in the beginning. There'll be lots of teething problems and things you need to improve. But the secret and the key to it all is that you listen to customer feedback. And that sounds cheesy and it sounds easy to say, but I think that one of the great things that we've done is we have a monthly meeting and we call it the Word of God, and we all gather around and we listen to what the feedback is that customers are telling us about our service, and we try to put in action some of the things that they tell us. And so this is what the product looks like that people get every month. Inside is a magazine all about the breweries, the beers, the country that we've visited. We've recently done an edition about Ireland, Poland, Germany, and I'm happy to say that we're currently working on doing an issue about Korea. And so we're going to be working with a number of South Korean breweries to introduce their beer to the UK. There's some fantastic craft breweries here. And as part of this edition, I also got the opportunity to visit North Korea last week. And we visited a number of breweries there. And we got to discover a little bit about what's going on there in terms of beer. This is one of the brewers that we visited. And so on the back of this, we're going to work with some South Korean brewers to create a special beer inspired by this trip. And we're looking forward to sharing the whole story of it in January when it comes out. And I guess that's more or less my story. And perhaps what my story shows is that something that could begin for anybody as a very simple idea over the course of a weekend with a bit of love and imagination and hard work can grow into something amazing. Can grow into something that changes your life, that gives you a career, and hopefully a chance to do some good along the way. I guess there's a number of people that I need to thank for making my story possible. Most of all my beautiful grandmother for inspiring the work that we've done and teaching me how to make jam in the first place. My grandmother is thankfully unaware of her intellectual property rights. She hasn't come chasing me for any royalties yet. My grandmother visits her local supermarket and makes sure all the labels are facing the front and turns all the competitors around the wrong way. My parents for letting me try out all of these ideas over the years. But I guess the best help and support I had was from having a mentor, a guy called Kevin, who had started a successful business, and he was just willing to share some lessons with me and things that he had learned. So I guess I would say to everybody, try and find a mentor, maybe someone who's been there, done it before, who can give you some advice. And I guess the last people I need to thank on my amazing adventure is the World Knowledge Forum for very kindly inviting me here today, and all of you for giving me the chance to come and share my story. Before we finish up, I'd like to invite Eugene to join me on the stage. He's from Spark Labs, and we're going to have a short Q&A. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eugene Kim. I am a partner at Spark Labs. We are a accelerator in Korea helping early stage startups grow. I want to thank also the World Knowledge for providing me to meet Fraser and learn about his amazing story of growing his business. So I guess I'll just kind of go right into it and ask a question.
Sounds great.
I mean, based on the presentation and the story I heard just right now, it seems like you just had the idea to start the jam business, somehow got yourself into a newspaper, and then all of a sudden you're meeting the Queen and you're going around the world and doing all this things that sounds very easy. But what was some of the hardest things that you actually experienced when you were going to go through these businesses?
Great question. I think, probably the hardest thing about starting a business, possibly the hardest thing about anything in life is in your own head, is motivating yourself to try in the first place, to try when things don't work out first time around. And in my case, I had spent a long time creating packaging, the comic book idea, to present to Waitrose, and they said no. They rejected my idea at that time, and that was a real low point. I'd put all of my love and whatever little money I had into this idea, and it was all wrong. I had to throw it in the bin and start all over again. And I guess it probably sounds cheesy, but the thing that got me through that was listening to the customer, listening to Waitrose. They said, look, you've done it all wrong, but if you change this and this, then you can come back and maybe we'll give it a shot. So sometimes you're wondering, should I continue with my idea or not? And if customers are giving you positive feedback about your idea, that hopefully will encourage you to not give up.
So just to follow up on that, what did you do to actually meet with and talk with your customers? Did you literally go meet them or just communicate over email?
Yeah, I guess at that time I literally went to the Waitrose office and got the opportunity to pitch my idea to the buyer. But also, I guess, in the early days, just knocking on doors, going to farmers markets, just talking to people directly. If you listen to what they say, then it's very easy to get feedback from customers. They're usually very happy to tell you what they think.
Got it. So, you went on to write a book, 48-Hour Startup, and in there, you mentioned a phrase which might not be familiar here in Korea, called wantrepreneur. Can you explain what a wantrepreneur is to everyone here?
I guess there's a lot of people who have an idea for a business, but never actually get around to starting it. They talk about wanting to start a business, they go to events about how to start your own business, they read books about how to start your own business, but don't quite take the first step and actually try. And I think the most important decision you can make is just to try. You really don't have anything to lose. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't really matter. Sometimes people worry, if I try my idea and it doesn't work, will people laugh at me or something like that? And I've found that basically people don't care if you if your idea doesn't work, it doesn't matter. People are not going to pick on you or laugh at you, or you probably have nothing to lose. So yeah, just give it a shot. And unless you try, you don't know whether it will work or not.
I think a lot of people in Korea, like, yes, they all want to try, but they always kind of fear failure. What do you have to say to encourage people to kind of forget about failure and try?
Yeah, I guess your idea won't work first time around. Probably the first version of your product won't be perfect. So go into it knowing that and be ready for it not to work first time around. And of course, it won't be a good experience if it completely fails, but there's a good chance that it won't completely fail. And even if it does, you'll learn a lot from the process of having tried. So yeah, I think you have very little to lose from giving it a shot.
So, I mean, even at Spark Labs, I mean, we meet with entrepreneurs. We run 2 programs a year, about 8 to 10 teams. And, we always say the same thing. You got to keep on trying different things to figure out until what works, right? And one of our partners, Hanju, he has this written on all his shirts. It's NEGU, which is never ever give up. Because we always say that entrepreneurs are always challenged. They're always, I mean, you eat no for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Everyone's telling you, you're just not going to work, this, or whatever. And so, should entrepreneurs never give up with their ideas? Or is it important to know when to quit? And how do you know when is it to quit?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess what's really important is that you, if you've tried your idea and it's not working, and everybody's telling you, we would never buy this product, then listen to the feedback that customers are giving you. But if the customer is telling you positive things, then hopefully that would encourage you to keep trying. A lot of the time it's tempting to ask your family and friends what you should do, but your family and friends are not really impartial. They care about you. They don't want to see you hurt, or they don't want to see you keep failing. So they might encourage you to quit or to try something else. The most important person to listen to is a customer, if you can get that opportunity.
Yeah. So. I mean, also in Spark Labs, a main part of our program is actually mentorship, and we have about over 100 mentors in our program. Most of them are very experienced entrepreneurs themselves, or sorry, excuse me, and. So we try to match them with a good mentor. You mentioned you had a great mentor named Kevin. Yeah. How did you meet him, and how did he help you?
Sure. Well, I guess when I was about 14, I started asking my parents. My parents were always very supportive of what I was doing, but I soon started asking them questions that they didn't know the answer to. So, how much margin does a supermarket need to make, or something like that? And so they started asking the neighbors, does anybody know an entrepreneur? And one of the neighbors said, I work for this guy. I think he's an entrepreneur. And so I got the opportunity to meet with him, and I had a cup of coffee, and he told me so much useful information in a short space of time about how to sell products to supermarkets and that sort of thing. And if you're trying to find a mentor, I guess I would say just don't be afraid of getting in touch with people. I've found that usually people's email address is just their first name dot last name at companyname.com. And if that bounces, try last name dot first name at company name, and eventually you can get in touch with anybody that you want to. So don't be afraid of just contacting somebody that you think might have the answers that you need. I've found that people are usually happy to help.
So when you interact with a mentor, maybe can you kind of provide some tips or what to expect? I mean, is he going to give you all the answers, or what was your experience?
I guess try to be prepared with questions. Get the most out of their time. Probably they're quite a busy person, so don't just ask, "Do you have any advice?" Ask, look, I've got this specific problem that I'm trying to solve. I don't know how much margin a supermarket needs to make, or I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. And if you have specific questions, you'll get the most out of the relationship. Yeah.
So, also in your presentation today, you mentioned people are maybe afraid to share their ideas because people might copy them.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, that does happen.
Yeah.
So, have you experienced that yourself? And if that happens, what you should do?
I guess if you're frightened that somebody can steal your idea, then maybe your idea isn't. If it's that simple that somebody could just hear your idea and steal it, then is it really that solid an idea? Is it ever going to be defended or safe? So yeah, I guess I've also found that in general people have so many of their own ideas that they're not getting around to doing that they generally are not also looking to steal yours as well. So I think it's just a fact of life that somebody might copy your idea if it goes well, but you might as well tell everybody anyway and get the most from sharing it.
Yeah, I mean, I also meet a lot of companies, and I meet companies that ask me, "Oh, yeah, I'll tell you more, but let's sign an NDA
Yeah.
or something." And I tell them, if I had to sign an NDA with everyone I meet, I can't talk.
Yeah.
I won't be able to meet with anyone. But yes, I totally agree. We at Sparkle ourselves, we also tell the teams, you have to understand that even doing a patent, that's actually you're telling people what you do in detail, and they could pretty much then go out and copy. Obviously, they can't do it the same way as you, right? But and then you're protected maybe for a certain amount of period of time. But sometimes the best thing to do is not to even release that and keep it as a trade secret. And I think I'm sure your grandma's recipe is not patented.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah.
So what's your idea on patents?
For some businesses, that's patents and trademarks are going to be really important, but for the majority of businesses, I think that's not the case. And most things you can't patent. You can perhaps keep it a secret, like your recipe, but really the way that you can protect your business is by building a brand and figuring out what is the special thing about my company story or company culture. That's something that you can make unique, and people can't copy who you are as a person or who you are as a business. So that's the best way to protect your business.
So I mean, ever since you were young, 10 years old, you started chicken and egg business, and then you moved to the jam, and then moved to oats, and now doing beer. When you came up with these ideas, do you always look at what you like to do, what's in your interest? And is there any specific industries you think entrepreneurs should consider starting their business if they do in the beginning?
I think there's opportunities in every industry. So I don't think one industry is better than another to start your business in. Figure out something that you are passionate about. In my case, I'm passionate about food and drink, and I love creating products that I myself would buy. I think that's a great place to start. If you really feel like this is something that you would want to buy, then probably there's other people who feel the same way. So that's a good test of your idea.
I mean, when you were young and started your SuperJam, I'm assuming you didn't have money, or did you get support from your family, or how did you get things off the ground, like even doing packaging and stuff like that?
Yeah, when I first started, I made 12 jars of jam and then sold them, and then I had enough money to make 20 jars and then sold them, and I made 30 jars and grew organically like that. And it's depending on the kind of business that you're starting, it's possible to start with very, very little money. So sometimes people worry that they can't start a business because they don't have access to any money from their family, or they maybe don't have, can't borrow money or find an investor. But usually you can find a way of getting a version 1 of your product to market for not all that much money. So sometimes it's kind of like a myth that you have to raise a lot of money to get started. For some businesses that would be the case, and you can definitely find an accelerator to support your idea, or
you started when you're very young, even before college, and if you, I'm sure you've been to Korea over like 10 times now, right? So you maybe understand Korea, and also in Asia. Young kids, they don't have time to. All they're doing is studying and going to different classes in academy. How can someone maybe in Korea or young start a business at the same time while they're going to school?
Yeah, definitely that's a challenge. I think running your business doesn't have to be a full-time thing. It can be something that you do at the weekends, can be something that you do in the evenings. And in my case, one of the first people that I told about my business idea was one of my teachers at school, and she was so excited that one of her students wanted to start a business, and she gave me a lot of encouragement and support. So I guess young people should definitely make their teachers aware of their idea and what they're trying to do, and hopefully their teachers can be supportive and understanding of what they're trying to do.
So moving to maybe something more kind of different is, you obviously started in your home country, and then you exported SuperJam out, even to Korea, Japan, and probably a bunch of other countries. How did you do that? And what difficulties did you find when you were kind of entering a new market to sell?
Yeah, great question. I guess the key has been finding the right partner in each market. So, here in Korea, we have a partner, and they got in touch out of the blue one day and said, we want to try and sell SuperJam in Korea. I said, okay, let's try. And then they grew step by step from there, and they've come up with so many ideas that are specific to the Korean market that I would never have thought of, but that turned out to be a great idea, like TV home shopping, or our collaboration with Super Junior, or different things that I wouldn't have come up with myself from the UK. So finding a partner who really understands the local market and comes up with ideas that that make sense there is the key.
In trying to grow your company, have you ever tried to raise like venture funding or other investors to help?
Yeah, for Beer 52, we've raised investment mostly from other entrepreneurs who've kind of been there and done it before, and they've brought capital, but also some experience and network. So when you're looking for an investor, definitely look for somebody who can bring more than just cash, who can bring you some advice and network and some support, because that might turn out to be the most valuable thing in the relationship.
So I guess I want to see if there's any questions from the audience. I think we could take one or two questions from there. So over there, yes, please.
How did you determine the margin of business? Because you were very young.
I guess, in the beginning I didn't know anything about business or about margins or how to do most things, but I guess trial and error, and I figured things out along the way and got some advice from my mentor. I guess in the beginning you don't know everything and you don't get it all right, but over time you can figure out those things, I guess.
Hello, I have a question about when you enter different countries. For example, when you enter the Korean country, or maybe when you went to other countries in Europe or maybe the United States, each time you entered a new country, did it happen because you targeted first, or because it happens that you met someone that was, I don't know, from Germany that said, hey, I would like to introduce this to Germany, or it was that, oh, I want to take this to Germany?
Yeah, all just by chance, really. Other people getting in touch, saying that they liked the product, and could they sell it in their country? And I guess I've always just been up for trying things, and some places didn't work, and some places worked really well. But if you don't try, you don't really know. So sometimes people think that you need to come up with a huge plan and do lots of research and figure out exactly all the details, but really you don't, even if you do that, you don't really know if it's going to work or not. So the only thing you can do is try. And I guess when it comes to launching in a new market, just like starting a new business, you can test it on a small scale. Start with a few stores and figure out whether it works in that market. So I guess finding the right partner and starting small is the...
And just another quick question. If you enter a new market, for example, a new country, and you happen to fail, would you try to stick and make it happen, or be just back it off and go to another country?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes we've given up on trying to sell our product in certain markets. Sometimes you think it's going to be easy, and then you discover that it's really complicated, and that maybe there isn't a great market for it there. So yeah, sometimes you've got to know when to quit as well.
I'll just maybe add to that and maybe see what you think is, I tell our teams, like I said, doing customer surveys and research, I think it's much easier for them to actually try the product instead of trying to see what they would do. And a lot of times, if you don't do the surveys correctly, you get false information from the users. Fraser mentioned a number of sites and services that you can use to actually get users to try your service and get it up really easy to try. So I would go off of just direct experience from your customers and talking to them. I like how Fraser talked to his customers. Yeah.
I'm interested in your service type for Beer 52. So are you considered to launching the new business in Korea domestic market?
Unfortunately at the moment in South Korea, my understanding is that you're not allowed to sell alcohol on the internet. But maybe in the future, if that changes, we'd love to launch Beer 52 here. I think it would be popular. But we are working with some South Korean breweries to take their beer to the UK. So we're very excited about that. And there's a fantastic craft beer scene here. There are some really great breweries making great beers. So I've really enjoyed checking it out.
Actually, we invested into a company that's doing some beer subscription.
Oh, cool.
I think you guys would have a great time talking, so I'll introduce you to it.
Nice one. Yes. Fantastic.
Okay. This is how you meet new people and new things. Okay. Any other another question? I think we have time for maybe one more. Okay.
How many members in your company? Because I'm curious. If you use outsourcing program, Shopify and etc., I think you don't need too much member.
That's right. Yeah, basically we don't have a factory, we don't have a warehouse, we don't have anything like that. So we've got 20 people in Scotland, so very small team, and they're just focused on sales and marketing and product development, and then all the manufacturing and everything else is outsourced, I guess, to partners. So the great thing is, if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea for a product, you don't have to do it on your own. You can cooperate with big companies who can manufacture for you or distribute for you or anything else. You can sort of piggyback on the infrastructure that they have already built.
Okay, I think we're kind of coming to the end of the session time. I just want to really thank Fraser for sharing his story. If you want to maybe say one last comment or message to the crowd about entrepreneurship and the future, please.
I guess I would say to everybody, if you do have an idea for a business, hopefully you've got some encouragement to try it and see what happens. Good luck if you decide to start a business. I'll be around. We're doing a book signing after this session, so if you didn't want to ask a question in front of everyone else, I completely understand, and feel free to come and say hello, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fraser. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.